Welcome to the audiobook channel. Here, we bring you a treasure trove of knowledge and entertainment, ranging from classic literary works to inspiring modern books. We hope to provide you with enjoyable and enriching experiences, making it easy for you to access knowledge whether you're on the go or relaxing at home. Join us in exploring the world of captivating stories and valuable lessons through each page of the book. How to Win Friends and Influence People Part 1. Chapter 1. If you want honey, don't destroy the beehive. May 7, 1931. The streets of New York were filled with noise and running feet. The police were chasing a dangerous criminal. Finally, after much effort and determination, the police caught Crowley, 2 guns, a serial killer, right where he least expected it, the house of his demander on West End Avenue. 150 police and Secret Service agents surrounded the tallest building, where he was hiding. They punctured the roof, sprayed smoke, and placed machine guns in the windows of the surrounding buildings. The deafening sound of machine guns and pistols rang out continuously for more than an hour. Inside the room on the top floor, Crowley hid behind the thickly padded armchairs, fiercely fighting back the police with a burst of machine gun fire. But in the end, this criminal with a good shot had to surrender. New York Police Commissioner E.P. Mulrooney emphasized that, 2 gun, Crowley was one of the most dangerous and brutal criminals in the history of crime, in the most populous city in the United States. A very noteworthy point about Crowley is, just a small reason, even no reason, or simply to relieve boredom, he can also point a gun at someone and pull the trigger. However, that is what the police think. This cold-blooded criminal does not think like that. While the police outside are trying to catch him, in the room, Crowley is writing a letter. The letter still has red blood stains. And this is what Crowley wrote: "Underneath this shirt is a tired but gentle heart, a heart that never hurts anyone." Reading these lines, everyone feels moved, but the truth is the opposite of what he wrote. Just a few hours before, Crowley had shot a traffic policeman when he stopped his car to check his driver's license. As the officer collapsed, Crowley jumped out of the car, grabbed the victim's pistol and coldly fired another shot into the trembling, dying body. Crowley was sentenced to death. In the electric chair at Sing Sing prison, he argued, "Is this my punishment for killing? No. This is my punishment for defending myself." It is strange that such an obvious criminal would not admit his guilt. I corresponded with Louis Lohr, the warden of Sing Sing prison, where the most dangerous criminals in New York are held. Louis Lohr confided, "It is rare for prisoners at Sing Sing to consider themselves bad people. They think they are normal people like you and me. They can tell you why they cracked a safe or pulled the trigger quickly. Most of them tried to come up with false excuses to justify their illegal and unscrupulous acts. They firmly believed that there was no reason to put them in prison." If Al Capone, 2 guns, and other gangsters never admitted to their heinous crimes, would ordinary people easily admit their own mundane mistakes? John Wanamaker, founder of the retail chain that bears his name, once admitted, 30 years ago, "I learned that it is stupid to scold others. I went through a lot of trouble that seemed unbearable before I understood the obvious truth, that God has given each person his own characteristics, and that no 2 people are alike. And, because of that, I cannot expect everyone to behave the same way, and everyone to criticize themselves when they do something wrong." Wanamaker was a genius at learning that lesson early. While it took me a third of a century of searching to begin to understand that 99% of us never criticize ourselves for anything, no matter how wrong we are. Criticism is useless. It only creates resistance and excuses. Criticism can also be dangerous because it touches people's stubborn pride, hurts their sense of importance, and ends up creating anger and hatred. Criticism also causes a denial of responsibility, and at the same time creates a feeling of depression and discouragement while the mistake remains unresolved. B.F. Skinner, a world-famous psychologist, proved through experiments that a pet praised for good behavior learns faster and remembers better than an animal punished for bad behavior. Recent studies show that this finding is also true for humans. The eminent psychologist Hans Selye said, "The fear of being condemned is as great in humans as the desire for being praised." George B. Johnston of Enid, Oklahoma, was in charge of occupational safety for workers in a design company. His important responsibility is to make sure that workers wear hard hats every time they work on the construction site. He recounted that, whenever he encountered workers without hard hats, he would use his power to force them to comply with the rules. They reluctantly agreed. However, as soon as he turned his back, they would take off their hard hats. After the training with Dale Carnegie, he decided to try a different approach. When he saw some workers without hard hats, he asked them if the hat was not suitable or if there was something wrong with it. He then reminded them that they should wear hard hats when working to avoid injury or danger in case of an unexpected incident. As a result, the number of workers who accepted to wear hard hats increased without any objection or unpleasant attitude arising. It is easy to find countless failures due to the critical nature of human beings throughout the history of all nations. That is human nature. Those who do evil and criticize others never criticize and look back at themselves. And criticism is like a carrier pigeon, always returning to where it came from. The danger is that those we criticize and condemn will certainly find excuses for themselves and condemn us in return. On the morning of April the 15th, 1865, President Abraham Lincoln was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth in a room of a cheap motel across the street from Ford's Theater. Looking at Lincoln with eyes of respect and deep regret, Secretary of Defense Stanton exclaimed, "This is the greatest leader the world has ever seen." What was the secret to Lincoln's success in such a leadership role? In my opinion, it was the way he treated people that helped him receive their special affection and wholehearted trust. However, that character was not inborn, but was cultivated. Few people know that in the past, when Lincoln was still in Pigeon Creek Valley, Indiana, he not only liked to criticize harshly, but also often wrote letters and poems, mocking others and spread them on the streets for everyone to read. Few people also know that the excellent lawyer Lincoln in Springfield, Illinois, often criticized his opponents publicly through articles published in local magazines. That arrogance could have lasted even longer, if not for one day. That was an autumn day in 1842. The young, competitive man mocked an arrogant politician named James Shields with an unsigned article published in the Springfield magazine. The whole city laughed at James. So, James was seething with indignation. At all costs, he had to find the person who wrote the article. He rode after Lincoln and threw down his glove, challenging Lincoln to a duel for honor. Lincoln did not like fencing, and even fought against it, but in that situation, he could not avoid it if he wanted to preserve his honor. Lincoln was allowed to choose his weapon. Because of his long arms, he chose a cavalry saber and learned fencing quickly from a friend who had graduated from West Point. When the time came, he and James went to a sandbar by the Mississippi River. Fortunately, at the last minute, their servants helped both of their murderous heads understand everything and ended the life-and-death duel. Only when Lincoln faced the line between life and death, his own and others, did he realize how terrible the experience was. That fatal duel taught him an invaluable lesson about how to treat others. From then on, Lincoln never wrote an insulting letter to anyone, never ridiculed anyone, and almost never criticized anyone for anything. During the American Civil War, Lincoln nominated McClellan, Pope, Burnside, Hooker, and Meade to lead the Army of the Potomac. Each general made terrible mistakes that left Lincoln in desperate straits. Half the country was furious with these incompetent generals. Only Lincoln was kind and never criticized any of them. One of his favorite sayings was, "Let us not judge others lest we be judged ourselves." When Mrs. Lincoln and her cabinet harshly criticized the Southerners, Lincoln advised, "Do not criticize them, for we might have done the same under similar circumstances." On several occasions, Lincoln himself almost criticized others, but he did not criticize them, even though he had every reason to do so. The Battle of Gettysburg took place over 3 days in early July 1863. On the night of July the 4th, General Lee, of the Confederate Army, began his retreat southward as a storm brought torrential rains. Ahead of him and his defeated army was the roaring Potomac River, its waters churning and foaming. Behind him was a victorious Union army in pursuit. Lee was caught in the middle with little escape. From his headquarters, Lincoln immediately realized that this was a golden opportunity to capture Lee's army and end the war. So Lincoln ordered General Meade to postpone the council of war and immediately march against Lee. Lincoln transmitted the order by telegram and later sent a special envoy to Meade demanding immediate action. But what did General Meade do? He did the opposite of the president's order. He called a council of war. Not only that, he hesitated to buy time, then sent a telegram refusing Lincoln's order. The next morning, the tide receded and General Lee crossed the Potomac River with all his forces. Lincoln was furious and shouted to his son Robert, "My God, I don't understand. We just had to reach out and grab them all, and yet all I said and did could not make the army attack the enemy immediately." In such favorable circumstances, any general could have defeated Lee. If I had been there, I would have beaten General Meade right away. In extreme bitterness and disappointment, Lincoln wrote to Meade. During this period, Lincoln was extremely conservative and it was very difficult to change his mind. That is why the letter Lincoln wrote to Meade in 1863 was filled with the harshest words of reproach. "Dear General, I do not believe that you do not realize the danger in letting Lee escape. He was almost in our hands. If we had captured Lee, this Civil War would have ended. But you have let the golden opportunity slip away, and this war will not last long. If you could not defeat Lee under such favorable conditions last Monday, what can you do now and in the future to attack Lee south of the river when you have only 2/3 of the force you once had? There is no reason for me to expect you to turn the situation around. You have completely lost the opportunity of a lifetime. I cannot express how disappointed and angry I am with you at this moment. What do you think Meade did when he read this letter? Meade did nothing because he never read the letter, simply because Lincoln did not send it. It was found in his files after Lincoln died. My guess, just a guess, after writing this letter, Lincoln looked out the window and said to himself, "Wait a minute. Maybe I shouldn't have been so hasty. It would have been easy for me to sit here in the peace of the White House and order Meade to attack. But if I had been at Gettysburg last week, seeing the bloodshed as Meade did, hearing the screams of my dying comrades as Meade did, I probably would not have wanted to attack. And if I had Meade's timidity and hesitation, I probably would have done exactly what he did. After all, the thing is done. Water has flown under the bridge. If this letter had been sent, I would have been somewhat relieved, but Meade might have tried to defend himself, or come back and condemn me. That would have caused negative reactions, hindered Meade's future ability as commander-in-chief, and, who knows, worse, might have forced him to leave the army. This was a clear mistake, and Meade would have surely realized it later. It was probably because of such thoughts that Lincoln put the letter aside. He learned from bitter experience that harsh criticism and condemnation almost always yield negative results. Theodore Roosevelt recounted that, when faced with difficult problems, he would lean back in his chair and look up at the large portrait of Lincoln that hung above his desk in the White House, and ask himself, what would Lincoln do if he were in this situation? How would he handle the problem? The great writer Mark Twain once wrote to someone who had angered him, "What you need now is a permit to bury yourself. Just let me know and I'll take care of it." Another time, he wrote to a publisher about a proofreader who wanted to correct his spelling and punctuation. "Don't make any changes to my work in the future, and tell that proofreader to keep his crazy ideas in his wretched head until he dies." Writing such sarcastic, critical letters made Mark Twain feel better. Those harsh words helped him release his anger, but fortunately, they did no harm because Mark Twain's wife kept them all in secret. Those letters never reached their intended recipients. Is there someone you want to change and improve themselves for the better? I fully support this. But why not start with yourself? Changing yourself is much more useful and practical than changing others, and the chances of success are much higher. Confucius once said, "Do not criticize your neighbor's roof for having a lot of snow, while your own door is not clean." If you want someone to resent you for decades and even hate you until your death, then give that person harsh criticism, even if you know for sure that the criticism is right. In fact, people rarely judge right and wrong clearly with reason. People often act according to their emotions, prejudices, and especially their inherent pride. Harsh criticism caused Thomas Hardy, one of the most famous novelists in English literature, to permanently give up writing novels. Extreme criticism also drove the English poet Thomas Chatterton to suicide. Benjamin Franklin, a rude man in his youth, became such a talented diplomat that he was chosen to be the American ambassador to France. When asked about the secret of his success, he replied, "I never speak ill of anyone, but only say the good things I know about them." Any thoughtless person can criticize, blame, and complain about others, and most thoughtless people do, but it takes a person who knows how to control himself and has a tolerant and generous soul to understand and forgive others. Great people often show their greatness in the way they treat small people. The story below is a specific example. Bob Hoover was a famous American robotic pilot. During a test flight, when he had just taken off and gained altitude, both engines of the plane suddenly stopped working. Thanks to his experience and ingenuity, he was able to land the plane on the ground. Although there were no casualties, the plane was almost a total loss. Hoover's first action after the emergency landing was to check the plane's fuel tanks. As he had suspected, the WWII propeller plane's fuel tanks contained no gasoline, they were filled with jet fuel. The fuel that had been left behind had allowed the plane to start initially. When he returned to the airport, he immediately went to find the mechanic who had serviced his plane. The young mechanic was so frightened and remorseful that he was almost insane. When Hoover approached, his face was pale and frightened, and his eyes were filled with tears. He knew he had just made an unforgivable mistake. He had damaged a very expensive plane and nearly killed 3 people. One could imagine the furious rage and vicious abuse that the proud and talented pilot was about to unleash on the mechanic. But no, Hoover put his big arms around the mechanic's shoulders and said, "I am sure that you will never make this mistake again. As a proof of my trust in you, I want you to continue preparing my F51 tomorrow morning. I believe you can imagine the mechanic's boundless emotion and gratitude towards Hoover after that act of tolerance. Parents often have a tendency to scold their children. However, before you scold your child next time, please read the article, Dad Forgot. This article first appeared in the People's Home Journal. We reprint it here after obtaining the author's permission. Father Has Forgotten is a short composition written in a moment of sincere emotion, which had such a strong impact on many readers that it was requested to be reprinted every year. Immediately after its first appearance, this famous article was published in all the newspapers of America. It has been translated into many languages, widely disseminated in schools, churches, forums, and has been broadcast on countless radio and television programs. Interestingly, it has also been used in high school and college periodicals. Sometimes a small thing can create a great impact. This article has truly created a miracle with parents in the family. I forgot. W. Livingston Larned. My dear son, listen to my words of regret. I crept into your room alone while you were in a childish sleep. Look. One hand under your cheek, your sweaty red hair clinging to your damp forehead. Just a few minutes ago, as I sat in the library reading my paper, regret suddenly filled my soul, and I rushed to your room to apologize. My son, I was angry, scolding you when you wiped your face with a towel while changing your clothes for school, when you left your shoes dirty, or when I saw you leaving things lying around the house. Dad always looks at all my mistakes. In the morning, Dad saw me not being neat when I woke up, eating in a hurry and putting too much food on my plate at once, because he only saw mistakes. When I said goodbye to Dad and asked for permission to go out to play, Dad just frowned and answered curtly and without any sympathy, "HMM. Be sure to come back soon." In the afternoon, Dad was also angry with my mistakes. When he saw my torn socks, Dad made me lose face in front of my friends when he dragged me home. I really made Dad very angry because I was not thrifty, did not take care of the things Dad had worked hard to buy for me. While Dad was reading the newspaper, I timidly walked up to Dad and looked at Dad with innocent eyes. Dad shouted, "What do you want?" And how touched my heart was when you just silently ran up, wrapped your little arms around my neck tightly with all your love and affection, then quickly ran away. My dear child, do you know, the newspaper left my hand in silence and a choking fear and pain invaded my heart. What have I done? I have turned myself into a father who only looks for his child's sins all day long, a father who only looks for his child's bad things to criticize, and this is the reward I give you as a child. I only want to see you this way and that way. I only want you to behave like an adult. I have measured you with the yardstick of an adult, with all my years of life and mature experience. My dear child, while I look at you, with those old and sad eyes, full of prejudice and scrutiny, I do not care to know the good, the sincere, the innocent in your nature. Your little heart is warm, and big like the dawn that is giving warm rays of sunshine to the vast hills. I innocently rushed to kiss my dad goodnight without worrying that he had been scolding me all day and being spiteful towards me, for no good reason. My dear child, I cannot wait any longer. I must quickly go to you, kneel down beside your little bed, and look at your innocent sleeping face with great regret. Perhaps you are still too young to understand the emotions that are flooding my heart. I promise you, from this moment on, I will return to being a true father, and always cherish your love even in the moments of intense anger. I will be your loyal friend, will suffer when you are unfortunate, will laugh happily when you are lucky and happy. I will bite my lips to keep from saying harsh words. Every time the angry demon rises in my heart, I will tell myself that you are still a child. Oh, it seems that I have looked at my innocent child, as if I were looking at a real adult. Now, looking at you curled up in the blanket, and sleeping tiredly on your tiny bed, I suddenly realize that you are just an innocent child. Every morning, I still coo in my mother's loving arms. I have read this story many times, and always feel the same emotions as the first time. Then I wonder how many times in my life I have also been angry with people around me for no reason. Be sympathetic and understanding to people instead of blaming them. Put yourself in their shoes to know why they behave like that. Knowing everything also means forgiving everything. As Drive Johnson once said, even God does not judge a person until the last minute of their life. So why do you and I do that? Asterisk the people you meet on the road of life will affect your life. Whether good or bad, they give you wonderful life experiences. Therefore, do not condemn, criticize or complain about anyone. Even if someone hurts you, betrays you, or takes advantage of your kindness, please forgive them because it is thanks to them that you learn to be tolerant. Ch trick mt ang I love vc kong ko, vt len tren s fan zocx or ang lng, v tha am I le iuang t how, nguyen tc1, kong ch trick, on trach hay than phi n. Thank you for following and supporting our channel. Your companionship is a great motivation for us to continue creating quality and useful content. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss our latest videos. Please click the subscribe button and turn on notifications to stay updated with interesting news and videos from us. Thank you very much.